everyone, my name is David Barton. I am your host today we are discussing the behind the scenes of robotic surgical instruments and robotic sterile processing. Before we get into it, we are going to ask my lovely co-host some regarding questions about robotic instruments dealing with sterile processing. I have my co-host with me today, Ms. Denasia Barton. Ms. Denasia, have you ever looked at robotic instruments today and think of how small it could be and how they're using it today operating in surgeries? Have you ever thought about something like that so small that you could really see it being used in robotic instruments of helping sterilize instruments that we use for surgery in hospitals, medical field, or anything of that sort? Hello everyone, we are back to my podcast and talking about behind the scenes with sterile processing challenging robotic instruments. And again, Ms. Naja, have you ever thought about something that could be so small to use in our medical field today?
No, I haven't, honestly.
Interesting. So robotic surgery has literally changed in so many ways with surgical procedures, dealing with robotic sterilization and dealing with sterile processing in any type of surgery we use in our medical field today. And writing this podcast today, we're pretty much going off of the standpoint of how can something that be so small, can we still use it, or will it even be used anymore dealing in our surgeries today in our 21st century of this world, or will it either advance longer into the medical field as it is now? So these systems can give surgeons greater procedures, improved visualizations, and the ability to perform very small and controlled movements from operating room all the way to the surgery rooms, and also in very advanced procedures. For example, say for instance, if I had broken my arm, they will use certain robotic tools to do the surgery and repair my arm, repair a bone, whether it's laser surgery or dealing with any type of retractor instruments today. All right, and we are back here witnessing my podcast today, dealing about robotic instruments and why are they so hard to reprocess.
Okay, so while we were away, you were discussing the reprocess of robotic instruments. So why are robotic instruments difficult to reprocess?
I'll say while they're difficult to reprocess, one of the biggest challenges that we have in this society today is that they're very complex. And the reason being that is during surgeries, instruments can come into different contacts with other body's fluids, instruments, I'll say other organic materials, as well as it being very difficult to remove, pretty much removing it. The longer organic materials remains on an instrument, it can be very, very difficult to clean it, sterilize it, and remove all the other bodily fluids off of that instrument. So it can be ready and reprocessed to use in another surgery for surgeons.
So this is why the sterile processing technician cannot rely on the visual inspection?
That is one reason, yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I'll say this, people, think about trying to clean it inside of a small space, but you can nearly see it. Think about that. Think about it being very, very hard for you to see it. So using robotic instruments, it can be a hassle, it can be hard, or it can be a good tool for our use dealing with surgeries and with cleaning it to make it easier for our surgeons to be very prepared for the next surgery, dealing with whatever comes into the hospital.
So is sterilizing the same thing as like cleaning it?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just a more, not grammar term, but more of a higher form term that we use.
Washing dishes, like how you use soap and water, is it the same thing?
No.
So what do you have to use to sterilize it?
You got to use very different chemicals. people say we can use soap, dish detergent, but we use more different type of fluids to clean it and get it sterilized because it has to go through 3 different processes. So we clean it with our soap and water. We put it inside of a very large vacuum tray and use the instruments that we use in surgery. We wash them, scrub them with our scrub brush, our scrubbing tools, and we put inside of a rack. We put it in this very big container that we use for it to be fully more clean, sterilized, and pressure washed all the way through so it can be prepared and ready for the next surgery. But we have to also make sure that there's no extra fluids, bodily fluids, bowels, or anything like that on top of the instruments to make sure that it's fully clean.
That's a lot of stuff. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. So let's talk about the manufacture of IFU.
Okay. So the IFUs, one of the most important things about it is that us as sterile processing technicians, it has a very manufacturer issues for use, of course. And IFU tells us that us technicians how the device is properly handled, how is it properly cleaned, inspected, as well as assembled, packaged, and sterilized the exact proper way that it's supposed to be. And I'll say one important thing about that, dealing with robotic instruments, is that because that the different instruments can have many different processing times and assembly times for it to be processed correctly, as well as getting it done the proper way, so it doesn't have any mishaps, and it also doesn't have to go back to us as processors to redo it all over again.
Gotcha.
All right, guys, and we are back to another episode, finishing out my podcast today, talking about robotic sterile processing. And what's your next question you have for us today, Mr. Naja?
So, the role of ultrasonic cleaning in new technology. Let's talk about it.
Okay. So, with the role of ultrasonic cleaning in new technology, that role is basically changing the way how robotic instruments are passed through and how they are processed correctly.
Okay.
So, in the past, sterile processing departments basically had a very heavily on manual cleaning.
Why?
Reason for that is manual cleaning can still extremely be very important, and also it can never help technologists with cleaning it properly, in a way, I should say. And it also can be very complex for a lot of these new advanced devices today. And reason that, as it says in this article I read about, as it says about a MI that was published in this year, 2026. Basically, robotic instruments never had a reprocessing approach before dealing with ultrasonic cleaning, and it became very, very difficult and very highly intense for sterile processors to really clean. And it made the cabinets that they're supposed to be put in heated, and also flushed out a lot of air. So how can I put it? It made it easier, but also a little bit difficult somehow for them to make sure that it's very clean, sterilized, and make sure that it's very prepared and ready for a lot of surgeons in hospitals today.
So what happens if it's not done correctly?
That's a good question. If it's not done correctly, it can change a lot. It can have very side effects to it. It won't get processed the right way. We will have to really do a second-hand cleaning, probably a third-hand cleaning, to make sure that it's cleaned properly, sterilized the right way, and that each of the components inside the facility, make sure that it's cleaned all the way, sterilized all the way, and make sure that every piece of fluid is properly cleaned. Make sure that our fluids that we use is up to par, up to standard dealing with that type of processing.
So what's the financial process of this? Because this sounds like it's gonna cost a lot of money.
It is. They spend over thousands of dollars dealing with their instruments. It's a lot of money putting into reprocessing and cleaning surgical instruments. The most money I would say in the state of Georgia that they probably have to pay for is $206,000, more than that.
$206,000. Do you know what that is?
A lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's still a lot of money.
It's what a surgical is what we have to do to make sure that a lot of our patients are healthy, healed, and don't get infected during surgeries. No matter what it is, whether it's brain surgery, whether it's kidney surgery, gallbladder, eye surgeries, any type of surgery, clinicals, whatever needs to be done, we have to make sure that's up to par and we do it the proper and the right way. Because you guys would not pay us the money that you guys pay us for us to do our jobs.
Insurance company pays. I don't pay anything.
In this other side of robotic surgery, this doesn't always receive as much attention. Dealing with robotics, it really doesn't, because people think, oh, well, as a surgeon, he can use his instruments today, different procedures, different advocates dealing with robotic surgeries. And I'll say after the procedure is finished, those instruments have to leave operating rooms and enter sterile processing.
So what are robotic surgical instruments?
Robotic surgical instruments, that's a good question. Robotic surgical instruments, we use these specialized instruments in surgery to control movements from a console depending on the type of surgery, whether it's a grasper, needle, scalpel, a retractor, the scissors, as well as your monopolar instruments that also drive higher powerful movements dealing with surgeries, and when using these specialized tools.
Are those drills? Monocular instruments, are those considered like drills?
Yes, drills and other types of scissors. All right, guys, and we are back with another episode leading into the end of my podcast today, dealing and talking about robotic instruments being reprocessed and sterilization.
Okay, so before we come to a conclusion, I would like to know, how do you guys account for all of the surgical instruments that went into the surgery, such as like, you don't want any malpractice lawsuits to come back just in case somebody got an instrument stuck in them?
So with that, we have a count. So we basically have to count each instrument that we wrap up inside for our surgeons to have for the surgeries. We literally have a counter that we count and make sure that we have each instrument inside that we sterilize, process, and make sure it's going out to the surgeons for the next surgery.
Mm-hmm.
We have a count to make sure that each one is inliable. If one is missing, we basically would have to go off of our count and make sure that each log has been counted for. And if that instrument is missing, we go back and look at our cameras, make sure that it has been processed right, it was in there, and if it was not, we talk to our surgeons and our doctors for that matter to make sure that they so-called didn't leave it anywhere, dropped it anywhere, because even though we handle it, we give it all to the surgeons. That's part of their job, to make sure that everything was done the proper way with their surgery, and that each instrument was used the proper way between their surgeons and the surgical first assistant. We talked to them as well to make sure that each instrument was used properly for their surgery, to make sure that everything was accounted for, and if it was not, we go up to the higher up. which is our HCA, who is our head account for any hospital that we work in, which is our higher up manager. And he goes in and takes a look at it and makes sure that everything was done the proper way. But if not, then be a little issue. So,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Okay.
so we try our best to not get sued for any type of malpractices issues in either whether it's in hospitals or clinicals, anything of that manner. We make sure that everything is done the proper way. We don't move. We move at a decent pace. Just so if we move too fast, we miss something, then it's a problem.
Understood. Okay, so let's conclude this thing.
All right, so in conclusion today, guys, we're gonna wrap up everything dealing about robotic instruments of not being reprocessed. Surgical instruments are being reprocessed, dealing with robotics. And in that manner, it's very important to really make sure that every instrument is clean. Make sure that even the robotic instruments that we use dealing with your gallbladder, your pancreas, we use those to clean. But we make sure that it's doing its proper job to make sure that everything is done the right way and that it's not no type of malfunction error, because if so, we have to stop the surgery and get into it with manually, because robotic instruments can also have a dire effect. If it doesn't work properly, has a malfunction during surgery, we would have to stop surgery and do it manually to make sure that the surgery goes without any type of fluke, any type of headache, so that person is well and healthy and goes home safely.